Marcus Johnson stood tall in his black graduation gown, the gold honor cords hanging proudly around his neck. At 22 years old, he had just completed his political science degree at Howard University with a perfect 4.0 GPA. The warm May sun shone down on the sea of black caps as the ceremony concluded. Marcus searched the crowd for his father. Colonel James Johnson was easy to spot. Even at 55, he stood straight as an arrow, his military bearing impossible to hide despite wearing a simple dark blue suit. The colonel's face, usually serious, broke into a rare wide smile as he approached his son. "You did it, son," Colonel Johnson said, pulling Marcus into a tight hug. "Your mother would have been so proud." Marcus felt the familiar pang at the mention of his mother, who had passed away from cancer when he was 14. "Thanks, Dad. I couldn't have done it without you." They walked together across the campus, passing groups of celebrating families taking photos. Several of Marcus's classmates waved and called out congratulations. "Got your acceptance letter from Georgetown Law yesterday," the colonel said, his voice casual but his eyes gleaming with pride. "I was going to surprise you with it tonight at dinner." Marcus stopped walking. "You're serious? Georgetown? I got in." "Full scholarship," his father confirmed. "It was in the mailbox when I left this morning." Marcus let out a whoop of joy that turned heads. Georgetown Law had been his dream since high school. Now, that dream was just a few months away from becoming reality. That evening, they celebrated at Marcus's favorite restaurant in D.C. The colonel had reserved a private table in the back, away from the noise of the main dining area. It was his way, quiet, understated, but thoughtful. To the future Attorney Johnson, the colonel said, raising his glass of water. "He didn't drink alcohol, never had." Marcus raised his own glass. "And to the man who made it all possible." The colonel shook his head. "You did the work, son. I just provided the safe home." "You provided a lot more than that," Marcus replied. He had always been curious about his father's military career, but the colonel rarely talked about it. All Marcus knew was that his father had served in Delta Force, the elite Special Operations Unit, and had retired as a decorated officer 8 years ago. "Dad, now that I'm done with school, will you ever tell me about what you did in the military? The real story, not just that I served my country line?" The colonel's face grew serious. "Some things are better left in the past, Marcus. What matters is the future, your future." As they ate, they talked about Marcus's plans. Law school would start in August. Before then, you would have the summer to relax, maybe take a road trip. The colonel had already helped him find an apartment near the Georgetown campus. "Just be careful out there," the colonel said as they finished dessert. "The world isn't always fair, especially to young black men, no matter how educated you are." Marcus nodded. He had heard this warning his entire life. His father had taught him how to handle himself around police. Be polite, keep your hands visible, don't argue. Even with a colonel for a father and a degree from Howard, Marcus knew the rules were different for him. "I know, Dad. I'll be careful." Neither of them could have known how soon those warnings would be tested, or how dramatically their lives were about to change. 3 weeks after graduation, Marcus drove through the quiet streets of Silver Spring, Maryland. It was just past 10 p.m. on a Friday night. He had spent the evening at his friend Jamal's house, playing video games and celebrating Jamal's new job. Marcus was tired but happy as he headed home to the apartment he shared with his father. The red and blue lights flashed in his rearview mirror without warning. Marcus checked his speedometer. He was going exactly the speed limit. He hadn't run any stop signs or made any illegal turns. Still, he knew the drill. His father had practiced it with him since he was 16. "Stay calm," Marcus whispered to himself as he pulled over to the curb. He turned off the engine, placed his hands on the steering wheel at 10 and 2, and waited. The police officer took his time approaching the car. Marcus watched in his side mirror as the man walked slowly, one hand resting on his gun holster. The officer was white, around 40, with a crew cut and thick neck. His name tag read Dawson. "License and registration," Officer Dawson said, shining his flashlight directly into Marcus's eyes. "My license is in my wallet, and the registration is in the glove compartment, sir," Marcus said politely. "May I reach for them?" The officer nodded without speaking. Marcus moved slowly, retrieving his wallet from his back pocket and pulling out his driver's license. Then he reached for the glove compartment and took out the car registration. Officer Dawson studied the documents with a frown. "This is your father's car?" "Yes, sir. He lets me use it." "And where are you coming from this time of night?" "My friend's house in Tacoma Park, sir. Just a game night." Officer Dawson's eyes narrowed. "Game night, huh? You seem nervous." "No, sir. Just trying to be respectful." The officer leaned closer to the window and sniffed. "I smell marijuana coming from this vehicle." Marcus was confused. There had been no drugs at Jamal's house. Neither he nor his friend smoked. "There's no marijuana in the car, sir," Marcus said. "I don't use drugs." "Step out of the vehicle," Officer Dawson ordered, his hand moving to his gun again. Marcus's heart raced, but he remained calm. He slowly unbuckled his seatbelt and opened the door, keeping his movements deliberate and his hands visible. "Turn around and place your hands on the hood," the officer commanded. Marcus complied, feeling the warm metal of the car hood under his palms. Officer Dawson patted him down roughly. "Stay right there," Dawson ordered before walking back to his patrol car. Marcus remained frozen in place, his mind racing. He knew he hadn't done anything wrong. His car was clean. He hadn't been speeding. This stop made no sense. Through the side mirror, Marcus could see Officer Dawson sitting in his patrol car, talking on his radio. After about 5 minutes, the officer returned with another cop, a younger officer who looked uncomfortable. "Johnson, I'm going to search your vehicle now," Dawson announced. "My partner, Officer Reynolds, will keep an eye on you." "Sir, I don't consent to a search," Marcus said firmly, remembering his rights. "There's no probable cause." "I already told you I smell marijuana," Dawson snapped. "That's all the probable cause I need." As Dawson began searching the car, the younger officer, Reynolds, stood awkwardly beside Marcus. "You a student?" Reynolds asked quietly. "Just graduated from Howard. Starting Georgetown Law in the fall," Marcus replied. Officer Reynolds looked surprised, then glanced toward the car where Dawson was thoroughly searching every compartment. "Hey, what do we have here?" Dawson suddenly called out, emerging from the back seat holding a small plastic bag containing what looked like white powder. "Looks like cocaine to me." Marcus felt his blood run cold. "That's not mine," he said firmly. "That wasn't in my car." "Tell it to the judge," Dawson said with a smirk. "Turn around. You're under arrest for possession of a controlled substance." As the handcuffs clicked around his wrists, Marcus caught a glimpse of Officer Reynolds' face. The young cop looked away, unable to meet Marcus's eyes. The Silver Spring police station buzzed with activity even at midnight. Marcus sat on a cold metal bench, his wrists still sore from the tight handcuffs. Officer Dawson stood at a nearby desk, filling out paperwork and occasionally glancing at Marcus with a smug smile. "This is a mistake," Marcus said for what felt like the 20th time. "That's not my drugs. I've never used cocaine in my life." Dawson ignored him, continuing his paperwork. The younger officer, Reynolds, hovered nearby, looking increasingly uncomfortable. "Reynolds, take his fingerprints," Dawson ordered without looking up. Officer Reynolds led Marcus to the fingerprinting station. As he pressed Marcus's fingers onto the scanner, he spoke in a low voice. "Look, I don't know what's going on, but Dawson's got a reputation. You should call a lawyer right away." Before Marcus could respond, Dawson approached. "What are you two whispering about?" "Nothing, sir," Reynolds said quickly, "just explaining the process." "Well, hurry it up. The holding cell is waiting for our college boy." Dawson's voice dripped with sarcasm. After fingerprinting, Marcus was photographed for his mugshot. The flash of the camera seemed to make his situation even more real. He was being arrested. His acceptance to Georgetown Law, his future career as an attorney, everything he had worked for was in danger. "I want to make my phone call," Marcus said firmly. "All in good time," Dawson replied, leading him to an interrogation room. "First, we need to have a little chat about your drug-dealing activities." The room was small with bare walls and a single table with 3 chairs. A camera watched from the corner of the ceiling. "I'm not a drug dealer," Marcus stated clearly for the camera. "I don't use drugs. The cocaine you claim to find in my car was planted." Dawson laughed. "That's what they all say. Let me tell you how this is going to go. You got no record, You're a college graduate headed to law school. The judge might go easy on you if you cooperate. Tell me who you're buying from, and maybe this all goes away." "There's nothing to tell because I don't buy or use drugs," Marcus repeated. "I want my phone call, and I want a lawyer." Dawson's friendly facade dropped. "You think you're special because you went to college? You think that makes you different from every other drug dealer I bring in here? Let me tell you something. In this room, you're just another criminal." For nearly an hour, Dawson tried to get Marcus to confess or give names of drug dealers. Marcus refused to say anything except to request his phone call and a lawyer. Finally, Dawson gave up. "Fine, you can make your call, but it won't help you. The evidence is clear. We found cocaine in your possession. That's a felony. Say goodbye to law school." Marcus was led to a phone on the wall near the booking desk. With shaking hands, he dialed his father's number. The colonel answered on the second ring, his voice alert despite the late hour. "Dad, it's me," Marcus said, fighting to keep his voice steady. "I've been arrested." "What? Where are you?" The colonel's voice was calm but serious. "Silver Spring Police Station. They're saying they found drugs in the car. But Dad, I swear they weren't mine. The officer planted them. I think it's because." The call cut off abruptly as Dawson pressed the disconnect button. "Time's up," he said with a grin. "Hope Daddy can help you, but I doubt it." As Marcus was led to the holding cell, he caught sight of Officer Reynolds watching him with a troubled expression. Reynolds quickly looked away when their eyes met. The cell was small with a metal bench and toilet in the corner. Two other men were already inside, both appearing to be sleeping. Marcus sat on the edge of the bench, his mind racing. He knew his father would come. The colonel had connections, resources. But would it be enough? The evidence was stacked against him, a bag of cocaine found in his car, his word against the police officers, and Marcus knew which one the system usually believed. As the cell door clanged shut, Marcus heard Dawson's voice from down the hallway. "Another drug dealer off the streets. Not bad for a Friday night." Morning came slowly in the holding cell. Marcus had barely slept, his mind racing with worry about what would happen next. The fluorescent lights never turned off, and the hard bench made a poor bed. His cellmates, a young man arrested for public intoxication and an older homeless man picked up for trespassing, had both been released around 5 a.m. At 9:30, a guard appeared at the cell door. "Johnson, you're up for arraignment. Let's go." Marcus followed the guard through a series of hallways until they reached a small courtroom. Several other detainees sat on benches, waiting their turn to face the judge. Most looked tired and defeated. "Marcus Johnson?" A woman in her 40s with curly brown hair approached him. She carried a stack of folders tucked under her arm. "Yes, that's me," Marcus replied. "I'm Laura Peterson, your public defender." She didn't offer to shake hands. "We've got about 5 minutes before you go before Judge Winters. The charge is possession of a controlled substance, cocaine. It's a felony." "It wasn't mine," Marcus said immediately. "The officer planted it in my car." Peterson sighed, as if she'd heard this 100 times before. "Look, I understand you're upset, but that's a serious accusation against a police officer." "It's the truth. The police report says Officer Dawson found 3 grams of cocaine in your vehicle during a legal search after smelling marijuana." "There was no marijuana. I don't smoke. You made that up as an excuse to search my car." Peterson flipped through her notes. "You have no prior record, which is good. You're a recent college graduate, employed?" "I just graduated from Howard University. I'm supposed to start Georgetown Law School in August." This finally made Peterson look up from her papers. "Law school? Well, that complicates things. A drug conviction would likely end that opportunity." "Which is why we need to fight this," Marcus insisted. "I'm innocent." Before Peterson could respond, the bailiff called Marcus's name. Feeling sick to his stomach, he approached the bench where Judge Winters, an elderly white man with thick glasses, presided. The judge barely looked at him as the charges were read. When asked how he pled, Marcus spoke clearly, "Not guilty, Your Honor." Peterson spoke briefly about Marcus's clean record and educational achievements, requesting reasonable bail. The prosecutor countered by emphasizing the seriousness of drug charges. "Bail is set at $15,000, Judge Winters announced, already looking at the next case file. Marcus was led back to a different holding cell to wait for processing. $15,000. He would need to come up with at least $1,500 for a bail bondsman. Where would he get that kind of money? 2 hours later, another guard appeared. "Johnson, you got a visitor." Marcus expected to see his father, but instead found himself sitting across from a man he'd never seen before. The stranger was in his early 60s with steel gray hair cut military short and intense blue eyes. He wore an expensive-looking suit and carried a leather briefcase. "Marcus Johnson, my name is Richard Bennett. I'm an attorney." His voice was deep and authoritative. "Your father sent me." "Where is my dad?" "Working on your situation from another angle," Bennett replied cryptically. "I'll be handling your legal defense. First thing, I've already posted your bail. You'll be released within the hour." "Thank you," Marcus said, surprised. "But I can't afford." Bennett raised a hand. "Your father is taking care of everything. Now, tell me exactly what happened from the beginning." Marcus recounted the entire story: the traffic stop, Officer Dawson's attitude, the planted drugs, everything. Bennett listened intently, taking notes. "Officer Dawson has a history," Bennett said when Marcus finished. "This isn't his first questionable arrest of a young black man." "So you believe me?" "I do. More importantly, I can help you prove it. But it won't be easy. It's your word against the police officers." "What about the other officer? Reynolds?" He seemed uncomfortable with what was happening. Bennett nodded thoughtfully. "That's something we can work with. And there's more. Your father asked me to tell you not to worry. He said, and I quote, 'Tell Marcus I'm activating old resources.'" "What does that mean?" Bennett's expression was grim but determined. "It means Officer Dawson picked the wrong young man to frame. Your father was Delta Force for 20 years. Those men don't leave their own behind, especially not their sons." Colonel James Johnson sat alone in his home office, the room illuminated only by the blue glow of his computer screen. It was 2 a.m., but sleep was not an option. Not with his son facing false charges that could destroy his future. After Marcus's call from jail, the colonel had made 3 phone calls. The first was to Richard Bennett, an attorney who owed his life to Johnson after a classified mission in Kabul 15 years ago. The second was to his old commanding officer, now a high-ranking Pentagon official. The third call went to a former Delta Force teammate who now worked for the FBI. The colonel's face remained expressionless as he studied Officer Richard Dawson's personnel file on his screen. Most people couldn't access police personnel records, but most people hadn't spent 20 years in Delta Force with connections in every intelligence agency in the country. 27 civilian complaints in 8 years, the colonel muttered, scrolling through the document. 15 involving African American suspects. 4 for excessive force. 3 for planting evidence. All dismissed or settled quietly. He clicked to another file, Officer Dawson's bank records. Unexplained deposits. A vacation home he shouldn't be able to afford on a cop's salary. The colonel nodded slowly. This wasn't just about racism, it was about corruption. A soft knock on the door interrupted his thoughts. "Enter," the colonel said, not looking up. The door opened to reveal a man with salt and pepper hair and a scar running along his jaw. Mike Sanders had served with the colonel for 12 years in Delta Force. Now he specialized in electronic surveillance for the FBI. "Got what you asked for, Colonel," Sanders said, placing a small flash drive on the desk. Dashcam footage from Dawson's patrol car the night he arrested Marcus. Supposedly corrupted according to official records. Nothing's ever really gone in digital storage. "Did you watch it?" Sanders nodded grimly. "It's all there, clear as day. Dawson pulling the bag from his own pocket before claiming to find it in Marcus's car. His partner looks uncomfortable but doesn't stop him." "Reynolds," the colonel said. "The younger officer." "Yeah. Guy looks like he wants to say something but doesn't have the guts." The colonel's face hardened. "Everyone has a breaking point. We just need to find his." Sanders leaned against the wall, arms crossed. "What's the plan, Colonel? We have enough to bury Dawson, but going through official channels might take too long. Marcus's arraignment is tomorrow." "We go through official channels first," the colonel replied. "I still believe in the system, despite its flaws, but we also prepare for alternatives." Sanders raised an eyebrow. "What kind of alternatives?" The colonel finally looked up from his computer, his eyes cold. The kind that would make our old unit proud. Understood. Sanders straightened up. The other guys are ready when you need them. Davis is watching Dawson's house. Wilson is looking into the DA handling the case. Everyone's taking vacation days to help. Good men, the colonel said softly. Sanders headed for the door, then paused. Colonel, may I speak freely? Always. I've seen you face down warlords and terrorists without blinking. But right now, you look more dangerous than I've ever seen you. The colonel turned back to his computer. Because this isn't about me, Mike. It's about my son, and there's nothing I wouldn't do to protect him. After Sanders left, the colonel placed a call to one more person, a journalist who had once embedded with his unit in Afghanistan. Sarah, it's Colonel Johnson. I need a favor. There's a story you should know about. Police corruption in Silver Spring. Yes, it involves my son. I'll send you files, but keep my name out of it for now. By dawn, the colonel had compiled a detailed dossier on Officer Dawson. Every complaint, every suspicious bank deposit, every pattern of racial profiling. He'd identified Dawson's superior officers who had looked the other way. He'd found 3 other young black men who had been arrested by Dawson under similar circumstances in the past year alone. As the sun rose, Colonel Johnson showered, shaved, and put on his best suit. He placed the flash drive and a printed copy of his findings in his briefcase. Time to show Officer Dawson what happens when you target a Delta Force operator's son, he said to himself as he headed out the door. The Silver Spring Police Department headquarters buzzed with normal morning activity when Colonel Johnson walked through the front doors at exactly 9:00 a.m. He wore a perfectly tailored gray suit with a blue tie. Nothing in his appearance suggested he was anything other than a respectable businessman or perhaps an attorney. I'd like to speak with Captain Wilson, he told the desk sergeant, his voice calm and authoritative. The sergeant looked up, about to ask for ID or the reason for his visit, but something in the colonel's eyes made him reach for the phone instead. Captain, there's a gentleman here to see you. Says his name is Colonel Johnson. 5 minutes later, the colonel sat across from Captain Thomas Wilson, a heavy-set man in his 50s with thinning hair and tired eyes. What can I do for you, Colonel? Wilson asked, leaning back in his chair. My son, Marcus Johnson, was arrested last night by one of your officers, Richard Dawson. The colonel placed a thin folder on the desk. Officer Dawson planted cocaine in my son's car. Captain Wilson's face hardened. That's a serious accusation. It's a serious crime, the colonel replied, opening the folder and sliding a printed photo across the desk. This is from Officer Dawson's own dashcam footage, which was supposedly corrupted. You can clearly see him removing something from his pocket before claiming to find it in my son's vehicle. Wilson stared at the photo, his expression unreadable. How did you get this? That's not important. What's important is that I have the full video, along with evidence of Officer Dawson's pattern of racial profiling and corruption. The colonel placed more documents on the desk, copies of civilian complaints, bank records showing unexplained deposits, and statistics on Dawson's arrest record showing a clear racial bias. I prepared similar packages for the FBI's Civil Rights Division, the Department of Justice, and the State Attorney General, the colonel continued. I'm hoping we can resolve this internally first. Captain Wilson's face had grown increasingly pale as he flipped through the documents. I'll need to verify all this. Of course. In the meantime, I suggest you speak with Officer Reynolds, who witnessed the entire incident. Young officers often want to do the right thing if given the opportunity. Across town, Mike Sanders was having a similar conversation with Officer Reynolds in a quiet corner of a coffee shop. I know what I saw, Reynolds said nervously, glancing around to make sure no one was listening. But it's my word against Dawson's. He's been on the force for years. I've been there 10 months. You won't be alone, Sanders assured him. We have the dashcam footage. Reynolds looked shocked, but the department said it was corrupted. Technology is a funny thing, Sanders replied with a smile. Look, I understand your position. You're worried about your career, about retaliation. But think about that young man facing prison time for something he didn't do. Reynolds stared into his coffee cup. Dawson's done this before. There are rumors among the rookies. We're told not to partner with him if we can avoid it. Then help us stop him. Meanwhile, attorney Richard Bennett was meeting with the district attorney, presenting his own copy of the evidence. The DA, a woman named Janet Morales, listened carefully as Bennett laid out the case. "I want all charges against Marcus Johnson dropped immediately," Bennett concluded. "And I want an investigation into Officer Dawson and everyone who covered for him." "You understand this will cause an uproar in the department," Morales said cautiously. "Better an uproar than a national scandal," Bennett replied. "My client's father is prepared to go public with everything if necessary." By noon, things were moving quickly. Captain Wilson had pulled Officer Dawson from patrol duty for administrative reasons. The DA's office had launched a review of the case. Internal Affairs had opened a file on Dawson. Colonel Johnson received updates from his network throughout the day. When Marcus called, concerned about what was happening, the colonel reassured him. "Trust the process, son," he said. "The truth is coming out." What the colonel didn't tell Marcus was that this was just the beginning. If the system failed them, he had 3 former Delta Force operators positioned around the city, ready to move to Plan B. The county courthouse was packed for Marcus Johnson's preliminary hearing. The case had attracted unexpected attention after a local news website published a story about potential police misconduct related to the arrest. At the prosecution table, Assistant District Attorney Linda Hayes shuffled papers nervously. She had been assigned the case that morning after the original prosecutor suddenly recused himself. Marcus sat beside his attorney, Richard Bennett, feeling more confident than he had in days. Although his father hadn't shared all the details, Marcus knew the colonel was working tirelessly behind the scenes. "All rise for the Honorable Judge Michael Hernandez," Bailiff announced. As everyone stood, the courtroom door opened, and Colonel Johnson entered, accompanied by a tall black woman in an FBI windbreaker. Behind them came Officer Reynolds, looking pale but determined. The colonel nodded to his son before taking a seat in the front row. Judge Hernandez, a stern-faced man in his 60s, called the court to order. "I understand the prosecution has a statement before we proceed." Ade Hayes stood. "Yes, Your Honor. The state wishes to withdraw all charges against Marcus Johnson effective immediately." A murmur ran through the courtroom. Marcus turned to Bennett, who smiled slightly. "That's unusual, Counselor," the judge said. "May I ask why?" "New evidence has come to light that makes it impossible for the state to proceed," Hayes replied carefully. "Your Honor," Bennett interjected, rising to his feet. "While we appreciate the prosecution's decision, we believe the circumstances of this case warrant a more thorough examination in open court." Judge Hernandez raised an eyebrow. "Explain, Counselor." "The charges against my client were based on false evidence planted by Officer Richard Dawson of the Silver Spring Police Department. We have proof of this misconduct, and we believe the court should be made aware of the full extent of Officer Dawson's actions." The judge leaned forward. "Those are serious allegations, Mr. Bennett." "Indeed they are, Your Honor. With the court's permission, I'd like to call Officer Kevin Reynolds to testify." Before the judge could respond, the courtroom doors burst open again. Officer Dawson stormed in, his face red with anger. 2 uniformed officers followed close behind him. "This is a setup," Dawson shouted. "They're trying to frame me." "Officer Dawson, you are out of order," the judge bellowed, banging his gavel. The FBI agent who had entered with Colonel Johnson stepped forward, showing her badge. "Richard Dawson, I'm Special Agent Tanya Williams with the FBI. We have a warrant for your arrest on charges of civil rights violations, evidence tampering, and corruption." As the officers who had followed Dawson into the courtroom moved to restrain him, the disgraced policeman pointed at Colonel Johnson. "You did this," he yelled. "Who you think you are?" The colonel stood slowly, his presence somehow filling the room despite his calm demeanor. "I'm just a father protecting his son," he said quietly. "But before that, I was Colonel James Johnson, Delta Force, United States Army Special Operations Command." The courtroom fell silent. Even Dawson stopped struggling against the officers holding him. 20 years in Delta Force," the colonel continued. "I'd taken down terrorists, rescued hostages, and protected this country from threats both foreign and domestic. But I never thought I'd need those skills to protect my son from someone sworn to uphold the law." Judge Hernandez cleared his throat. "Colonel Johnson, while your background is impressive, This court operates on evidence, not reputations. Of course, Your Honor, Bennett said smoothly, holding up a flash drive. We have the dashcam footage showing Officer Dawson planting evidence in Marcus Johnson's vehicle. We also have Officer Reynolds' testimony and documentation of a pattern of similar misconduct by Officer Dawson targeting young black men. The judge turned to the prosecutor. Ms. Hayes, are you aware of this evidence? Yes, Your Honor, she admitted. The district attorney's office received it yesterday. That's why we're withdrawing the charges. I see. The judge looked at Dawson, who had gone pale. Officer Dawson will be remanded to custody. Mr. Johnson, you are free to go. This court apologizes for the injustice you have suffered. As Dawson was led away in handcuffs, Marcus turned to his father. The colonel's face showed no triumph, only quiet resolve. For the first time, Marcus truly understood what it meant that his father had been a Delta Force operator, not just the skills he possessed, but the unwavering commitment to justice that had shaped his entire life. 3 months after the dramatic courthouse scene, Marcus Johnson sat in the library at Georgetown Law School, surrounded by thick legal textbooks. The fall semester had begun 2 weeks earlier, and despite everything that had happened, Marcus was exactly where he had dreamed of being. His phone vibrated with a text message. It was from his father. CNN in 5 minutes. Marcus quickly packed his books and hurried to the student lounge where a large television was mounted on the wall. A few other students were already watching, but none paid attention to Marcus as he took a seat. The CNN anchor appeared on screen. Breaking news from Silver Spring, Maryland, where a major police corruption scandal has led to sweeping reforms. Our correspondent Sarah Chen is live at police headquarters. Sarah. The screen switched to a female reporter standing outside a government building. Thanks, Michael. Today, the Silver Spring Police Department announced the results of a 3-month investigation that has led to the firing of 3 senior officers and the resignation of Police Chief Robert Garcia. The investigation began after Officer Richard Dawson was caught planting evidence during the arrest of an innocent black college graduate. Marcus watched in amazement as the report mentioned that over 20 wrongful convictions were being reviewed and potentially overturned as a result of the investigation. The catalyst for these changes, the reporter continued, was the arrest of Marcus Johnson, son of retired Army Colonel James Johnson. Through his military connections, Colonel Johnson was able to obtain evidence that exposed Officer Dawson's criminal behavior. The screen showed a photo of Marcus's father speaking at a community meeting. Marcus smiled, knowing how uncomfortable his dad was with publicity. The report ended with news that Officer Dawson had pled guilty to multiple charges and would serve 5 years in prison. His former partner, Officer Reynolds, had received immunity in exchange for his testimony against Dawson and others involved in the corruption. As the news switched to another story, a student sitting nearby turned to Marcus. "Wait, are you that Marcus Johnson?" she asked, her eyes wide. Marcus nodded slightly. "Yeah, that's me." Soon, several students gathered around him, asking questions about the case. Marcus answered politely but briefly, uncomfortable with the attention. Later that evening, Marcus drove to his father's house for their weekly dinner. Since starting law school, he had moved into university housing, but made sure to visit the colonel regularly. He found his father in the backyard, grilling steaks. The colonel looked more relaxed than Marcus had seen him in years. "I saw the news," Marcus said, handing his father a bottle of his favorite non-alcoholic beer. The colonel nodded. "Justice takes time, but it usually arrives eventually." "Thanks to you," Marcus added. "Without your connections and skills, I might be in prison right now instead of law school." "I just did what any father would do," the colonel replied, turning the stakes. Not every father has a Delta Force background and friends in the FBI, Marcus pointed out with a smile. The colonel looked at his son seriously. "The important thing is what you do now. This experience has given you something most law students don't have, a personal understanding of how the system can fail." Marcus nodded. "That's why I've decided to focus on civil rights law. I want to help others who don't have a Delta Force dad to fight for them." Pride shone in the colonel's eyes. "Your mother would be so proud of the man you've become." As they sat down to eat, Marcus's phone rang. It was Richard Bennett, the attorney who had defended him. "Marcus, I just got off the phone with the Johnson Foundation," Bennett said. "They'd approved funding for 10 new civil rights cases, including a class action against the Silver Spring Police Department. That's great news, Marcus replied, giving his father a thumbs up. The Johnson Foundation had been the Colonel's idea, a non-profit organization funded by his military pension and donations from his former Delta Force teammates. Its mission was to provide legal help to victims of police misconduct and to promote accountability in law enforcement. After dinner, as Marcus prepared to drive back to campus, he hugged his father tightly. "You know, Dad, I never fully understood why you were so secretive about your military career. But now I get it. It wasn't just about classified missions. It was about who you are. Someone who fights for what's right, quietly, effectively, without seeking credit." The Colonel smiled. "Just remember, son, the most important battles are won not with weapons, but with truth and justice." Marcus nodded, knowing he would carry those words with him throughout his legal career.